Great. Thank you for joining us, Liam.
Thank you for asking me, James.
Excellent. So today we've got Liam Halpin, Vice President of Sales EMEA and LATAM for LinkedIn Sales Solutions. He brings more than 3 decades of sales experience leading international sales organizations at companies like Fujitsu and Dell. And you have global experience in far regions like Russia, the Middle East, and also Latin America. LinkedIn introduced Sales Navigator as a standalone SaaS product 5 years ago. And since its debut on July 31st, 2014, Sales Navigator has gone from a promising product to table stakes at most B2B organizations, according to a recent Forrester report. During this time, LinkedIn has developed deep integrations with CRMs like Microsoft Dynamics, Salesforce, acquired companies like PointDrive, and developed the Sales Navigator application platform, Snap. Snap provides the opportunities for other sales technologies like SalesLoft or Drift to integrate seamlessly. And the LinkedIn Sales Solutions European team is led by Rebecca Schnaffer. Is that? Schnaffer. So thank you very much for joining us today, Liam. We're really excited to have you here and hoping to learn more about you and the business that you represent. Coming in today, what's got you most excited about Friday in London at LinkedIn?
Yeah, it's always great to visit our London office. There's a particular energy in this office, and we've had a very busy week. Arrived here on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. My leadership team had our quarterly offsite, which normally we look at what's going on. One day is what's going on in the business right now. What can we do better today? And then the second part of it is, what is that 2021, 22 view? Where's the landscape going? Where's the ball going to be? And we invest a lot of time in doing that. And then yesterday, we had our first LinkedIn Sales Technology Summit. And that was we had over 150 people in the room, but we also had more than 1,000 people on LinkedIn Live, which is a new live video feature we have on the platform. Wow. So it's been a busy week, and now I'm here this morning. So after this, I've got other meetings, and then I'll be heading to Heathrow for a 7 p.m. flight home to Ireland.
Fantastic.
Just in time to come back to London on Monday for a flight to San Francisco.
Excellent. So you've got an exciting adventure ahead of you. How do you stay motivated? When you wake up, you're staying in many hotels all around the world. What's the first thing you think about when you wake up in the morning?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it depends on where I am, and I'm always have been a huge believer in compartmentalization in terms of if I'm here and I've got 3 things to do across this week, they're the things I think of. Okay. And so you can't. I can't impact things that I need to be. There's no point me thinking about things I need to do this weekend at home, because I'm here and I need to be in the zone for that. So normally I compartmentalize myself into where I am, what I'm there to do, and then I try and restrict what I'm thinking just to that for that time frame.
Interesting, and that enables you to perform at your best in the zone while you're in the office or in country.
Correct, because like everybody these days, we're always on, whether it's WhatsApp or whether it's email or the various other platforms that people can contact you on. And it's easy to get distracted. And people's expectations of everybody, it's, hey, have you ever got a WhatsApp which is, hey, I sent you an email 5 minutes ago and you haven't come back to me on Teams. Okay. Yeah. So it's staying in that zone and making sure that these are the things I need to achieve this week. Yeah. And trying to do a great job on the things I need to achieve versus peanut spreading across multiple things.
Excellent. As we go through the interview, we're going to learn more about your career. I wonder at this stage of seniority and the level of success you've achieved in your leadership career, what's inspired you to continue to up level?
Yeah, it's interesting that. I often talk about this, but the very first thing I did that somebody gave me money for, apart from like a paper round, which I was really terrible at, it was when I was 16, 17. I had 2 video games commercially released. I was a home software programmer, and I made a reasonable amount of money from that. And that was in the days of the Sinclair Spectrum and Arc Atmos and Commodore 64. And then that industry collapsed into the console business, right? So I made a decision in 1985 when I left secondary school that I'd gotten a decent enough what we call the Leaving Cert in Ireland, the equivalent of A levels in Ireland in the UK, to go and do computer science at college. Two things influenced me. One was that a friend of mine who was a couple of years older, he was 4 years older than me, had gone through college and was now working for a bank here in London, and going, dude, don't go into programming. I'm writing subroutines to knock like the seventh decimal off something, right? So it was like, don't do this. And the second thing that influenced me...
There's an alternative out there.
Yeah, the second thing that influenced me was that the economic environment in Ireland at that time in 1985 was 17% unemployment. And literally, at the time, there was so much immigration, people heading to the States, people heading to Germany, the UK. It was a pretty dismal place. And I had... I'd been offered a role as a trainee manager in a supermarket, a company called Superquin. And they were, hey, we're going to give you a job. We're going to send you to night school 2 nights a week. You're going to learn about law. You're going to learn about management. You're going to learn about retail. I made a decision to do that. Okay. And the ethos that my dad had always put into me was, the only thing I want you to do, no matter what you try and do, is do your best, right? Just don't do less than your best. Do your best. Yeah. Okay, and that was a fairly strong work ethic. So I talk about this. I get paid appreciably more money now, and I have done in every other job since that job. But I didn't work any less hard for my £8,500 salary. That was my full salary back in 1985. Than I do today for the number I'm not going to disclose.
for another day.
And generally my career advice to people is, look, opportunity will find you, okay, but it won't find you if you're waiting for it.
That's fair. When you talk about the early stages of your career, was it the supermarket that introduced to the experience of sales? Was there someone in your life? How did you actually get introduced to sales?
Yeah, it was interesting. Well, first of all, the 2 video games that I had released, I had to sell those to a music company. So I actually had a contract with a music company for those. I was 17 years of age. My parents didn't know this was going on. I had to sit in front of a bunch of suit-wearing, tie-wearing executives and pitch my product. So it was my very first sale was that.
Amazing.
It was pretty easy because I wasn't overly impressed with my output. They were like super impressed.
Yeah.
So that I suppose my first sales. The thing that got me into sales was that I was doing my supermarket training manager job for 3 years, relatively happy. And then a friend of mine who had emigrated to Germany came back to Ireland, driving a brand new Golf GTI, wearing a Hugo Boss suit, saying, you need to get yourself to Germany. I'm selling cars to American soldiers, and you could come work for me. So I, on a moment of impulse, it just felt right, said I'm going to Germany.
Interesting.
Okay, so a month later, I landed in Wiesbaden.
Did you speak German?
No, I didn't need to speak German because we were selling cars to American soldiers.
Okay.
At the time, there was think about 400,000.
Why does an American soldier need a car?
So the American military back in the 80s, they had about 400,000 people in Germany.
Wow. And
they would move their families with them as well. Whether it was Wiesbaden, whether it was Frankfurt, whether it was an Air Force base called Bitburg that I worked on, you had sort of like a mini version of America, where the families of the soldiers lived, and then you had the military operations. So when they would normally do a 3-year rotation in country, so they could buy a car tax-free to use when they were in, and then the military would ship it back. They would ship a 40-foot container of household goods plus 1 car. So so we could either sell a car to you in country, or we could deliver a car to wherever you wanted delivered to when you were going back to America. Right?
Okay, great opportunity.
Yeah. So I went. So what was interesting was I went over to be what we would call an SD.
Yeah.
So I was on the car lot, qualifying people, and I would bring qualified prospects
What
to the sales rep.
What was the skills then that you had either identified in yourself or you learnt from others that made you more effective than maybe your peers?
Yeah, I think two things. I grew up on an army base. I was born on an army base. I grew up on an army base. My dad was in the army for 34 years, so I felt comfortable in that environment.
Yeah.
And also, again, some of the I'm relatively comfortable talking to people no matter what their level of seniority is.
Mm-hmm.
So I would treat a 3-star private the same as a 4-star general, and not be afraid to talk to either. And I think it was a willingness and an openness to talk to people, understand what they were looking for, and then try and guide and direct them.
And if you fast forward to today, when you think about the solutions that LinkedIn Sales Solutions takes to the market, and you think about your own hiring philosophy, what do you look for in individuals that you would like to join your teams?
Yeah, the most important thing for me is somebody who understands that, at LinkedIn we talk about relationships mattering, and what I've seen in the arc of my career is that is so true. That there are people that I do business with today that I competed against 20 years ago, but it was a ethical competition. And so I look for people that can demonstrate that they've invested in relationships,
Mm-hmm.
and that they understand the value of two things: the payback of relationships in the long run, but also the payback of integrity in the long run. And when I sold cars, there were guys that would misrepresent factors, and they sold more than I did at that time. I wasn't prepared to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, in other early stages of my career, there was people who were prepared to do things. I worked in the photocopier industry, and there were people prepared to do things in that industry that I wasn't prepared to do.
Yeah.
But the difference is that I've tracked the arc of people, those people who did those things, and none of them have good jobs today. So integrity is I really believe in integrity,
Mm-hmm.
and I believe that integrity will pay you back in your career.
Mm-hmm.
It may cost you right now,
Yeah.
but you can't buy your reputation.
Absolutely. I had the good fortune myself to spend 3 years at LinkedIn. What do you think is the fundamental DNA here that makes it a special place for people to work?
Yeah, I think the key thing is that LinkedIn's culture and values are not just something that are on a plaque on the wall in reception. When we talk about members first is one of our core values.
Yeah.
And that so much value for our members emanates from that, but also it's about creating an ecosystem which is a trusted platform. When we talk about integrity, it's super important. The one that also then I spend a lot of time talking to people about is our culture of transformation. So we make a commitment to people who join LinkedIn, me included, that there's 3 elements to transformation. We want you to help us transform the world. So we're trying to create economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce, and you have a role in that. So while you're here, whether you work in sales solutions or talent solutions or learning or marketing solutions or some of the new businesses like Glint that we've purchased, that we're all contributing to that.
Yeah.
But in order to be able to do that, we need everybody to contribute to transforming the business. This business is growing at a phenomenal rate, and it's not slowing down. So that means that what was fit for purpose last year needs to be plus this year to be fit for purpose. And the payback for the individuals on that is that's a transformational experience for you. The experience you're gaining, the skills, the knowledge, and a lot of the skills and knowledge we focus on will pay our teams back in the arc of their career.
Yeah, and I think...
but the core thing, James, is that, and you notice from having been here, is that they're not just on the wall. It's in our language. It's there. Everyone's committed to it, and it's a super powerful mechanism. In fact, if I left LinkedIn and went to another business, I'd be looking to codify culture and values in a similar vein of what do we stand for? how to, what's the tribal knowledge of this organization, and I find that it really energizes the team.
Yeah, I feel it's it's deeply impactful on your soul almost working at LinkedIn, and that's something that we're looking to replicate within Sales Confidence as a business long term as well. Thinking a bit more close to home now, thinking about sales solutions and the LinkedIn Sales Navigator product, I imagine, although it's very familiar to us, I'm sure there's still a huge market out there of people that are still not using LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Can you just articulate the kind of value proposition of LinkedIn Sales Navigator, and before we kind of talk more broadly about your view on the future of LinkedIn sales solutions?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. Is that if we, being a B2B salesperson today is significantly harder than being a B2B salesperson 20 years ago.
Okay.
And we spoke about this yesterday at the conference, and the reasons for it have been there's been societal and technological shifts, significant societal and significant technological shifts since 1991. So first of all, when I started my B2B sales career, we went on training courses around identifying the decision maker. Well, for your B2B salesperson today, there isn't a decision maker. In fact, Gartner CEB have been tracking this for quite a while, and for the last couple of years, they've been saying it's about 6.8. So on average, about 7 people involved in a B2B relationship high-value sale. We've also done work with some technology companies recently, and if you're a company selling in data centers, you're selling complex IT solutions, that buying circle is likely to be 12 to 14 people. Okay. So that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
The second thing that's a challenge that's people related is, and LinkedIn, we're able to uniquely see what the movement of people is at different roles, is decision makers, the amount of decision makers that change annually is 20%. So 1 in 5 decision makers are changing job.
Right.
And then if you look at some of the stats we have on specific roles, if, for example, you are entering into a 1-year sales cycle for something complex, and a CMO is one of the key people in that stakeholder or buyer circle, they've been in seat for more than 34 months, there's a high statistical probability that person will leave during that year. And and the leaving is they can leave and take another role in their own organization, or they can move out of that organization. Yeah. So that wasn't the case in the early 90s. In fact, I did I'm dating myself now. When I worked for Canon, I closed a very large microfilm contract with Allied Irish Bank, and the person that I dealt with retired about 4 years ago in the same job. Okay, so that doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
People are moving around. The next, so there are societal shifts, people moving around, yeah, people changing jobs on a more frequent level. The technological shift happened slowly, and people think about technology shifts as happening quickly. So in 1991, when I was selling photocopiers for Canon, the only way a customer could find out about a Canon product was to speak to me. Mm-hmm. And the only way they could find out about the Xerox product was speak to the person I competed against, et cetera, et cetera. So the value that a salesperson brought to a customer was information, mm-hmm, and then negotiation, information followed by commercial discussions. Now, we don't need salespeople for information. If you're a salesperson and you pride yourself on, I know everything about all of my products, and that's what my customer is going to have trust and confidence in me, that may not be the case, because the customers are empowered to go and get, mm-hmm, that information. So right now, and that took time. When the internet, or the World Wide Web as it was in 1995 hit, it was pretty crap. Right? It doesn't look like what we have today. Yeah. And actually, most corporates' approach to the early internet was to turn it into a digital representation of whatever was in their golden pages ad. Okay, and it wasn't until the late 90s that people start putting limited amounts of product information, whereas now you can literally find anything about any product, mm-hmm, on the internet. Plus, your source may not be the vendor's website; it may be a review site, and in our space we've got G2. So the customer is empowered not just to find out about your products, but find out about other people's experiences with your products.
Has that created the case that there's many more technologies as well?
So the challenge for a salesperson is, how do I, if I have 40 accounts, how do I stay on top of all of that?
Yeah.
How do I stay on top of these people are moving? What's happening with these customers? The other shift then is that buyers' expectations are much higher. And we see this reflected in a couple of things. Firstly, there's a Forrester report bouncing around that showed they've been measuring buyers' propensity to self-source information. It's increased from 54 a couple of years ago to 68. So buyers' preference, want to find out before I engage a salesperson.
Yeah.
Second one that's pretty impactful is there's an Accenture report. They looked at 1,000 buyers in corporates across the world, and 77% of the buyers said that they don't believe salespeople can help them because they don't understand them.
Wow.
Now, what's happening with buyer expectation is that in 1991, again, I would go to a customer that I hadn't met before and say, hey, what do you guys do around here? Tell me about your businesses. Now, at that moment in time, I was differentiating myself from all of the other salespeople. Right? Hey, let me tell you about my stuff. Okay? So building credibility by trying to seek to understand at the beginning. Now, today, if I rolled up into any customer and said, so what do you guys do? I'm destroying my credibility because that buyer has expected me to understand who they are. That person is thinking, have you not looked me up? Have you not researched? So what we see is, we see customers expecting that when salespeople talk to them, they talk to them with knowledge of their industry, knowledge of their company, knowledge of the function that the person has, and then it's important that that person's able to build knowledge and rapport of that individual.
And is that what LinkedIn
So Sales Navigator
is allowing you to do?
Yeah. So Sales Navigator allows you to build that relationship at scale.
Got it.
Okay. I often talk about, imagine for a moment that you could hire an assistant for all of your salespeople. And this is a very small fraction of what Sales Navigator does, but
Sure.
it illustrates the value that it can deliver. So salespeople are expensive.
Yeah.
So imagine that you could hire an individual for every one of your salespeople. And what that person would do every morning is they'd come in before the salesperson. They would phone all of the salesperson's customers and say, has anybody left? Has anybody joined? And they would make a list. They would then phone everybody in your company to figure out, does anybody in our company know any of these people? Okay? And they create a little list of next best actions. This person's joined and John knows this person. You might want to have a conversation with John. So that's one thing they do. The second thing the person would do is they'd go to LinkedIn and they'd find all of the postings of the people that were relevant in a buying circle, print it out and leave it on the desk. Mm-hmm. Then it'd go to the news and they'd find out everything that's happening about that company. They're opening new offices, they're expanding, they're merging, whatever, and they'd leave a little pile of next best actions as well. So when the expensive salesperson came in and sat down, they understood people movement, they understood company news, they understood industry news, and then they were informed to take a next best action. And you only have to pay that person about $1,600 a year. Would that be a valuable resource for your expensive salespeople? So Sales Navigator is bringing that surfacing relevant information, but it also is giving the salesperson the ability to understand what's going on, think about that next best action, and then engage the customer in an informed way. Now, that's a fraction. That's the tip of the iceberg.
Sure. Well, we're not going to be able to go into all the capabilities today, and we know it is a powerful solution. Is there a perspective on where the future of sales solutions is going in terms of how you think about the contribution you're making to the sales technology stack? Yeah. Can you share your view on that?
So if you think about everybody is sitting on relationship capital in our organization. And if you think about the value of businesses, when you're buying a business or you're selling a business, goodwill is always a material element on the balance sheet. When you strip back goodwill, key components of that are, what are the relationships that this company has? Mm-hmm. Now, what we see is that people don't understand the relationship capital. And yesterday I spoke about 1930s Saudi Arabia, and nobody realized there was 268 billion barrels of oil under the sand, but they were sitting on a very, very large resource.
Yeah.
Now, how did they get at it? They used technology, and so early seismic reporting and drilling, and suddenly, wow, we've got the second largest oil reserve ever discovered, and the rest is history. So it's the technology that allows you to scope and identify, explore, and extract the value. So the value that we see for relationships is, here's an example. Again, it's fresh in my mind because we shared it yesterday. We looked at a company who have 4,000 salespeople globally. They, in the last quarter, those people in the target, specifically in the target industries in which they sell, had looked on LinkedIn.com for almost 3,000 decision makers in their target customers. Because they're not using technology that's able to enable them to see the scope of their relationships, the relationship capital they're sitting on, they missed over 1,400 potentials for warm introduction. Somebody with that 4,200 people knew somebody that somebody else was searching for, but because those two salespeople are not connected, they're not able to see it. So sitting on relationship capital is hugely valuable to all organizations. And what we see is that. I didn't quite get that. That's Siri trying to get in on the.
Trying to help us out with the podcast.
So that's a value, right? You're sitting on relationship capital.
Yeah.
How do you get to it all? And you're never going to have a situation where all of the salespeople who work for you are going to be connected together. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah. And
an example of that is there's 6,000 salespeople at LinkedIn. I'm connected to probably about 750 of them. There was 30,000, 40,000 salespeople at Dell. I was connected to about like 600 or 700.
Yeah.
So you're never going to get everyone in your organization connected. It just doesn't happen naturally. So what Sales Navigator is able to do is to give people a map of the relationship capital that they're sitting on, and then a mechanism through something we call Team Link to be able to extract that and get value from those introductions.
Okay, great. Kind of moving forward, focusing on more about kind of your personal journey around sales. For you, was there kind of anything that you read or some kind of sales book that's had an impact, or are you more of an individual that's learned from mentors that have actually helped you improve your own performance?
Yeah, I think that the very first. So when I sold cars, I actually went from being an SD to an AE very quickly, and we went on a 2-week intensive training course. And so the very first business sales relationship management book that I ever read was Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yeah, great.
Little bit dated now.
Yeah.
But in and what I would say is that I've read many business books over the years, and it's about extracting what resonates with you.
Yeah.
One that I read a couple of years ago that had an impact on how I show up with customers, how I show up in internal meetings is a book called Talk Lean, which is about say what you're there for up front. And that's been pretty valuable in terms of having open, honest, and constructive conversations with people. I'm here to talk about this. And I often talk to people about what I learned from that book. The anecdote that this is not in the book, but that I use to explain the book is that if you're sitting at home on a Saturday afternoon and your neighbor that 2 doors down that you haven't spoken to in over a year rings your doorbell and they're like, "Hey, James, how's it going? Like, how's the family? Oh, you're looking good. Are you working out?" 10 seconds into that conversation, you're like, you're not trusting that interaction.
Yeah.
Well, what's going on? Now, 5 minutes later, he's like, "Oh, look, my lawnmower broke down. Any chance I could borrow your lawnmower?" Even if you give him the lawnmower, which you probably will, it's not a good experience for you. Okay.
So
versus, ding dong, James, haven't seen you in ages. Hope you're doing well. Look, my lawnmower's broken down. I'm going on holidays. I'm really stuck. Can I borrow your lawnmower?
Yeah.
Okay. You're like, yeah, I want to help you now. Okay. And it's a positive experience. So getting to the this is what I'm here for.
We have a lot of aspiring leaders and who listen to the podcast, and they're thinking about how they navigate each stage of their career and when is it right to make that transition. Are there examples of a framework or process that you've gone through to decide, make a decision on transitioning into the next stage of your leadership career?
Yeah, so slightly controversially on this is that leadership's not for everybody, and in fact, when I started as a leader, I was a pretty poor leader. My first sort of real sizable sales director role, I was working for Fujitsu Siemens Computers, and I was running the channel and consumer business for Ireland, and my team there wasn't a metric that we could hit that wasn't green. We were the highest revenue, profitability business unit in the whole of EMEA. If there was anything that was to be, we were at the top of, we were at the top of. And at the time, I had 14 people working for me, and I got a new boss, a lady called Neve Spellman, after her 30 days looking, Neve sat me down and said, you're doing a great job, but you've reached the pinnacle of your career, which was I was pretty insulted, first of all, but then I was like, okay, tell me more. And she's like, look, your style of management is, I can see that you were a computer programmer, because what you literally do is you program punch cards for people. You do this, and you do this, and you do this. If this doesn't happen, come back to me, then do this, if and. So I was literally using programming language in terms of managing people. And her point was, what you're doing is not scalable. That you if I give you another 14 people, you just run out of time to be able to do that programming. So that was a pivot moment for me in my career, where it was like, actually, do I go back to being an individual contributor, or do I say, look, I need to press reset here, and build a different type of management, a different type of scale. I decided on the latter, and the good thing is that many of those people who work for me are still my friends, so it wasn't too bad an experience for them. But I would ask people to, like, what's your motivation to get into leadership?
Yeah.
Like, what is it? Because if it's not for you, it's not for you.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with being an individual contributor who's highly performing and earning a lot of money, if that's what you want to do. So what is it you really want to do, and will leadership give you that experience? What I would say is that it's important for somebody who's considering to be an individual contributor to get themselves a mentor who is already a leader.
Yeah.
And somebody who's had, my recommendation is, pick somebody that's taken the same path as you, and pick somebody who hasn't taken the same path as you, and use those two people to get a rounded view. Spend time with them, understand what the job is, because a lot of the time people don't understand what the job actually is.
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes you see that tip of the iceberg. It's you show up at presentations, and at events, and you give a presentation. That's a fraction of what I do on a daily basis.
Well, on that daily basis now, taking into consideration the global responsibilities that you have, how do you manage people in different regions? And is there some notable anecdotes from some of the cultural differences in maybe South America versus UK and Europe versus the Middle East? Is there some kind of cultural differences just that you could help us understand how you interpret it and work with it?
I think it's important that there are cultural differences between the UK and Ireland.
Yeah.
There are cultural differences between Ireland and North America. I work with a myriad of different nationalities. I think what's important is to understand what the macro culture is. So in certain geographies, for example, this is a generalization, is that German people like data first and story second. Anglo-Saxon is story first, data second. But I think it's important that you recognize cultural differences, but you also treat people as individuals, because just because somebody is German, they may not, that may be different for them. So I think
Yeah.
it's getting to understand that, you know, what's acceptable from a macro perspective. So I rarely, if ever, wear a tie these days. But there's certain markets that I go to. It's disrespectful not to wear a tie.
Which markets?
So, you would normally wear a tie in the UAE,
Okay.
and you would normally wear a tie in Germany.
Interesting.
So it's understanding that. You know, are there cultural sensitivities you need to be aware of, and,
Yeah.
and then respecting that.
Great.
But then, importantly, from my perspective, is treating people as individuals and taking the time. So an example of that is that when I assumed responsibility for the Latin American market, I actually went and spent 3 weeks in Brazil to really spend time with the team and understand, like, how does this business function? How does this team communicate? How do they collaborate? And it's different to how people in Dublin or people here in London would collaborate.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing. Moving into the final part now of this interview, thinking about how we unlock confidence in individuals, and what does confidence mean to you, and how do you get the best out of yourself?
Yeah, I think again, there are, you know, there are days I'm super confident, and there's days I'm not confident. Okay, and I think what's important is that that you understand what value you bring to the table. What's important to me is that that confidence should not come from arrogance. It should come from that you feel comfortable in what you're talking about,
Yeah.
or you feel comfortable with what you're doing. But also importantly, that you work in an environment where if you're not comfortable, and you're not confident that you can do something, that you can actually surface that and say, hey, I can't do this, right? Or I need help with this. So a lot of people make the mistake of comparing I'm borrowing now from Dr. Phil, right? They compare their reality to somebody else's social mask, okay? And it's like, oh my God, that person is able to do this. And often, often people are, well, that person is such a confident speaker on stage. And I refer them to something I read about Robbie Williams, was that, you know, before Robbie Williams at the height of his career would go on stage, he would actually get sick because he was so nervous. But once he hit the stage, hit that note, then it flowed. But it didn't stop him being nervous and lacking confidence at that moment in time. So I think it's, I try to talk to people about, look, you know, what you see is sometimes like the duck, right? The legs are flapping under the water. It might look like Cam on top.
Yeah.
Is it the duck or the swan? I can't remember which it is. But for me, if I'm struggling with it, I've got a network of people that I can have open, honest, constructive conversations with.
Great. So even despite challenges you personally may be having behind the scenes, you can draw on the kind of hearts and minds of others that are close to you, that understand you, and allow you to kind of execute what you need to do in a day-to-day perspective.
Yeah, and you know, we're all human.
Yeah.
You know, we've all got other stuff going on in our lives, as well as work. And also, it's important that that you let people know what's going on in your, different people are very public people, different other people are private people. But if you need help, ask for help.
And do you manage kind of your mental and physical well-being? Do you have certain activities? Do you take time out? Is there kind of techniques that you use?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that keeps me grounded, keeps me sane, is I actually do a lot of cycling.
Okay.
So I cycle about somewhere between on a good year, 6,000 kilometers a year. On a this year it'll be about 4,500. And what that does for me is I'm outside. It's tomorrow I'll do 60K. Sunday I'll do 100K. And it keeps me focused on something that's very different. The interesting thing is it's also numbers driven. So Strava is the sales navigator of the cycling world.
So you're still competitive.
I'm still competitive. I'm still looking at. But I'm competing against myself.
Yeah.
But it's about, hey, can I go further? Can I go faster?
Yeah.
Can I get my heart rate lower than it is?
Yeah.
And that. So I would say I've been cycling for about 5 years. I think that's been a major contributor to keeping me grounded and keeping me keeping me alive.
Excellent. Well, we're glad you are, and we're glad you were. And thank you very much for being so honest with what you shared with us today. Is there a final thought about this business or about some trends that you would like to impart on the listeners before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think it's the biggest. So business leaders need to recognize that the sales environment they're sending their sales teams out into is different than the sales environment. If you're a business leader who came up to be a business leader in a sales track, your teams are out there doing different jobs than you were doing. And rhetoric like "I got my biggest deal from a cold call," that sort of stuff. That doesn't help, right? Because that's not helping your teams. They're not going to get the biggest deal from a cold call. From a cold call, that doesn't work anymore. So it's recognizing that the industry has changed, the buyer expectations have changed, and then recognizing, look, if you're a business leader that's still only enabling your sales team with a mobile phone, laptop, and CRM, that's what you were doing 20 years ago in 1999. And where else in your business have you not invested in technology in 20 years?
Yeah.
And understand and recognize the job your team has to do today, because it's different to 20 years ago. And the solution to that is technology, not just LinkedIn technology, but the myriad of technologies that are out there that can help with different parts of the sales cycle.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing. Also,
Thank you, James.
you for all your support. Really great to be partnering with LinkedIn Sales Solutions at the upcoming SaaS Growth event. And looking forward to more conversations in the future.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Liam.
Thank you, James.
Good man.